The sliding doors of the emergency room slammed open with a metallic bang. The night air followed the paramedics in, sharp with the smell of gasoline and blood. Their stretcher rattled across the tiles, wheels squealing as they hurried toward the trauma bay. On it lay a woman. Her military fatigues were soaked through, the fabric clinging dark and heavy to her skin. Blood pooled beneath her body, a red trail marking their path. Machines screamed, flat tones and wild beeps that spoke of fading life. Dr. Michael Hayes had been on his feet for 24 hours. His body begged for rest, his mind fogged with exhaustion. But the second he saw her condition, the fatigue evaporated. His instincts surged to life. Female, early 30s, severe abdominal bleeding, pulse barely there. "She's crashing," one of the nurses shouted. The paramedic leaned over the stretcher, words tumbling out fast. "Vehicle collision, Highway 9. Suspected liver rupture. BP dropping like a stone. Pulse 30. Michael's voice cut through the chaos, steady as steel. "Prep her for surgery. Now." His hands moved automatically, clamping, pressing, assessing. He could feel the seconds slipping through his fingers, like sand. If they hesitated, she would die right here on his table. That's when a cold voice intruded. Dr. Hayes. The hospital administrator, Robert Dawson, stood just behind him, crisp suit untouched by the blood staining the floor. His expression was clinical, calculated. "She's not registered here. She belongs under Veterans Affairs protocol. Transfer her." Michael didn't even look up. "She won't survive the drive. Protocol is clear," Dawson pressed. "She is not our patient. If you operate, you'll be in direct violation of hospital policy." Michael's hands froze for a fraction of a second. He lifted his gaze and met Dawson's. Two men locked in silent war, one weighed by rules, the other by oath. "You send her away, you sign her death certificate," Michael said, voice low. "I'm not letting that happen. I'm giving you a direct order." Dawson's voice sharpened, carrying authority. "Step back." The room held its breath. Nurses hesitated, glancing between them. The monitors screamed louder, the woman's heartbeat slipping. And in that moment, Michael made his choice. He tore his gloves tighter, leaned over the patient, and snapped. "Scalpel. Now." The nurse obeyed, pressing the instrument into his palm with trembling fingers. Robert Dawson's jaw tightened, fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Michael muttered. His eyes never left the patient. "But she won't." Hours blurred inside the sterile white of the operating room. The rhythm of beeping machines, the metallic clatter of instruments, the acrid smell of cauterized flesh, they all mixed into a single desperate symphony. Michael's hands moved like a man possessed, stitch by stitch, clamp by clamp, fighting death itself. And then silence. The monitors steadied. The frantic alarms gave way to a slow, steady rhythm. She was alive. Barely, but alive. Michael peeled off his gloves, sweat dripping down his temples. His chest heaved with exhaustion. But inside him, something stirred, that quiet certainty he had done the only thing that mattered. When he finally stepped into the empty hallway, the fluorescent lights felt colder than before. He pressed his back against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the polished floor. His hands trembled, not from fatigue, but from the weight of what he had just risked. Robert Dawson's words echoed in his skull. "You'll regret this." But as Michael closed his eyes, the image of the soldier's bloodied face returned. And in that moment, he whispered to himself, almost like a vow, "I took an oath, and I'll take the consequences." He had no idea how right he was, because saving her life tonight would unravel his own. The next morning, in a quiet kitchen across town, his daughter Emma would ask a question that pierced deeper than any scalpel. "Dad, did you save her?" The first light of dawn slipped through the torn curtains of Michael Hayes' kitchen, painting the room in faded gold. The house was small, quiet, lived in. On the walls hung crayon drawings, school photos, and reminders of a family that had once been whole. Michael stood over the stove, shoulders slumped, his tired eyes rimmed with dark circles. The frying pan hissed as he flipped a pancake, only to reveal a charred disk of blackened batter. He sighed, tossing it into the trash, which already contained two equally tragic attempts. Behind him, a small voice broke the silence. "Dad? Is it supposed to look like that?" Michael turned. There in the doorway stood Emma, his 10-year-old daughter. Backpack already slung over one shoulder. Hair tied in a messy ponytail, she had clearly attempted herself. Her eyes, wide, curious, and far too wise for her age, softened the edges of his exhaustion. He forced a smile. "Just a practice round, kiddo. The real ones are on the way." Emma padded barefoot across the linoleum floor and sat at the counter, swinging her legs. Michael rinsed the pan, poured fresh batter, and this time tried not to think about the endless monitors and blood-soaked uniforms of the night before. But Emma's next question cut through his distraction like a scalpel. "Did you save her?" The spatula froze in his hand. "The woman," Emma clarified softly. "The one they rushed in last night." Michael's throat tightened. He had always underestimated how much his daughter absorbed. The way she listened, noticed, pieced together truths he never said aloud. "Yes," he said finally. His voice cracked before he steadied it. "She made it through surgery." Emma studied him, her gaze far older than her years. "Is that why you were so late?" Michael nodded, flipping the pancake with careful precision. "Mom used to say," Emma continued, "that sometimes your patients needed you more than we did." Her words were matter-of-fact, not bitter, the resigned wisdom of a child who had grown up with a father who was always saving everyone else. Michael set the spatula down and knelt in front of her, gently turning her on the stool so her face met his. His surgeon's fingers, always so precise in the operating room, worked tenderly through the tangles of her ponytail. "Your mom was right about a lot of things," he said softly. "But she was wrong about that. Nobody needs me more than you do, Emma." For a moment, silence filled the kitchen. Just the faint hiss of batter cooking. Then the shrill ring of the kitchen phone shattered it. Michael picked it up, his expression shifting as he listened. Emma watched, her young eyes sharp, reading the subtle flickers across his face like only a daughter who had lost her mother could. "I understand," Michael said flatly. "Yes, I'll be there." He hung up, staring at the wall for a long moment before forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just grown-up stuff, Em. Nothing for you to worry about." He flipped the pancake perfectly this time, sliding it onto her plate with a flourish. "Breakfast is served." Emma didn't press. She never did. But as she ate, her eyes wandered to the photographs lining the hallway. Most were of her mother, Anna Hayes, a woman whose gentle smile Emma carried in her own. One frame, however, lay face down. It had remained that way since the night Anna died, when Michael's grief had slammed it to the floor. Emma chewed quietly, wondering if her father would ever stand it upright again. Across town, the sterile lights of Cedar Grove Hospital flickered as Lieutenant Sophia Carter opened her eyes. The world was a blur of white ceilings and antiseptic air. Pain radiated through her body, sharp and unrelenting, centered where tight bandages wrapped her abdomen. "You're awake," a nurse said gently, adjusting the monitor. "Welcome back. You gave us all quite a scare." Sophia's voice came out dry, cracked. What happened?" "Car accident. Route 9. You were heading back to base. Internal bleeding, broken ribs, lacerated liver. But Dr. Hayes performed emergency surgery. Another hour and..." The nurse stopped herself, her eyes softening. "You wouldn't be here." Sophia blinked, her memories fractured. Headlights. A sharp turn. Then, the explosion overseas. The sand. The fire. The screams. Her chest tightened, breath catching in panic. She shut her eyes, burying the memory. "Do you remember any of it?" the nurse asked carefully. Sophia swallowed. "Not much." The nurse hesitated, then lowered her voice. "There's a board meeting tomorrow. Some people say Dr. Hayes broke protocol by treating you instead of transferring you to Veterans Affairs. Administrator Dawson, he's been looking for reasons to cut costs." Sophia's eyes widened, her voice ragged but firm. "He's in trouble for saving my life." "Hospital politics," the nurse murmured. "Rest now. You've got a long road ahead." But Sophia's mind was already sharpening with determination. "I need to be at that meeting." Back in town, Michael sat in his car outside Emma's school, watching her disappear through the double doors. Only then did he let his composure crack. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The phone call replayed in his mind. Suspended pending review. Protocol violation. Unauthorized treatment. 15 years of sacrifice, double shifts, missing birthdays, losing Anna, raising Emma alone, all of it now hanging by a thread. On the passenger seat, a pile of unpaid bills glared back at him. The mortgage was 3 weeks late. Medical debt from Anna's final months still choked their savings dry. He closed his eyes. For 3 years, he had whispered questions to her memory. This time was no different. "What would you tell me to do, Anna?" he whispered. The silence gave him nothing back. The following morning, Michael sat alone in the hospital boardroom. Across from him, 5 board members and Robert Dawson, smiling faintly like a man who had already won. "Dr. Hayes," Dawson began, "do you understand the charges against you?" Michael's voice was calm. "I made the only choice a doctor could make." Dawson launched into a speech about budgets and protocols, words as sterile as the room itself. Then, the door creaked open. Gasps filled the chamber. There stood Lieutenant Sophia Carter, pale, weak, her hospital gown hidden beneath a military jacket. And 4 poles served as her cane, surgical bandages visible beneath her clothes. The board froze. Even Dawson's smugness faltered. "Lieutenant Carter," the chief of medicine began, "you should be in bed." "With all due respect, sir," Sophia's voice was weak but unwavering, "I should be dead. If Dr. Hayes had followed protocol, I would have been transferred 40 minutes away while bleeding out. He made the only humane choice." Her words fell heavy, undeniable. The room held its breath. And Michael realized for the first time that he was no longer fighting this battle alone. But what neither of them knew was that the vote had already been decided long before the meeting began. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Every eye was fixed on Lieutenant Sophia Carter, who stood unshaken despite the 4 pole at her side. Her pale face bore the strain of both injury and determination, yet her voice carried like steel across the chamber. "In combat we have protocols too," she said. "But no soldier would ever let a comrade die because of paperwork. If Dr. Hayes had followed yours, I wouldn't be here. That is the truth." For a heartbeat, silence. Then Robert Dawson leaned forward, his lips curling into a controlled smile. "This isn't about quality of care, Lieutenant. It's about resources. Dr. Hayes' department has consistently been the most expensive to maintain. His actions only confirm his disregard for protocol." "The issue," Sophia cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade, "is whether this hospital exists to save lives or save money." The words rang in the sterile air, striking deeper than any accusation Dawson could spin. But Michael already knew. He could see it in the board members' eyes, in their folded arms, in the way their pens had stilled. The decision had been made before the first word was spoken. The vote was swift, for hands rose in favor of termination. Only one, Dr. Westfield's, lingered in support of Michael. "Effective immediately," Dawson said, his voice smooth, victorious. Michael didn't argue, didn't plead. He simply nodded, gathered his papers, and stood. Because what do you say when you've just been condemned for doing the right thing? Outside, the late morning sun burned bright against the sterile glass of the hospital. Michael stepped onto the pavement, the building looming behind him like a fortress he'd been cast out from. "Dr. Hayes." Sophia's voice stopped him. She hurried toward him, her breathing shallow, her steps uneven. The effort nearly toppled her, but she didn't stop. "I can't believe they fired you," she said, chest rising and falling, "for saving my life." Michael looked back at the hospital, 15 years of his career sealed behind its walls. His voice was flat, resigned. "It's not your fault. Dawson's been waiting for an excuse. I was expensive. That's all." "This isn't right," she pressed. "I have contacts. I could go to the press." "And then what?" he interrupted. "Local doctor versus corporate hospital? Even if I won, who would hire me after that? I'd be a liability." Her eyes softened. She wanted to fight for him, to stand against the injustice. But he saw the exhaustion in her frame. He placed a hand on her arm, gently. I just need to figure out how to tell my daughter. Sophia hesitated. Then, a spark of resolve crossed her face. You saved me. Let me help you. The VA's swamped. Weeks before I'll get follow-up care. I need someone to check my stitches, monitor my recovery. I'll pay you directly. Michael studied her. His instincts said no. He had enough chaos in his life already. But her eyes, there was something in them he recognized. A weight, a loneliness, a plea unspoken. One visit, he relented at last. That's all. The next afternoon, Sophia stood at Michael's front door. The neighborhood was modest, the kind where mailboxes leaned and children's bikes lay scattered in driveways. She knocked, clutching her jacket tighter around her. The door opened, but it wasn't Michael who stood there. It was Emma. The girl froze, her backpack slipping from one shoulder as she took in the stranger in uniform. Her eyes darted to the patches, the medals, the scars barely hidden beneath fabric. Are you a soldier? Emma asked. Sophia gave a tired smile. Lieutenant Sophia Carter, Army medic. Emma's eyes widened, a mixture of awe and curiosity. Did you fight in a war? Emma, Michael's voice called from behind, appearing in the doorway. Lieutenant Carter is here as a patient, not a storyteller. But Sophia crouched down, despite the tug of pain in her side. She met Emma's gaze level. Yes, I served in Afghanistan. I helped soldiers on the battlefield. Like your dad does here, just with less equipment. Emma's fascination lit up her entire face. That's amazing. During Sophia's examination, Emma lingered nearby, peppering her with endless questions. Did you carry a gun? Did you save lives? Did you ever get scared? Sophia answered each gently, weaving truth with care, protecting Emma from the horrors while never lying. Michael, meanwhile, worked quietly, his surgeon's hands inspecting stitches, noting healing, masking the storm in his chest. When it was done, Sophia stood carefully, thanking him. Emma, however, wasn't finished. You look good, Emma declared with childish certainty. But that's because my dad's the best at fixing people. Sophia's lips curved into a smile. She looked at Michael, her expression softer now. I believe that. And then Emma added, as if it were the most natural invitation in the world. We have spaghetti on Thursdays. It's the only thing Dad doesn't burn. Emma, Michael's face reddened. Lieutenant Carter has her own plans. But Sophia tilted her head, considering. Actually, I don't. But only if I can bring dessert. That Thursday became the first of many. The meals were awkward at first, silence punctuated by Emma's chatter. But slowly, the stiffness melted. Michael began to notice the way Emma blossomed in Sophia's presence, how her laughter returned, how she leaned into Sophia's stories with shining eyes. And Sophia, she found herself lingering longer after dinner, inventing reasons to return. Groceries, books for Emma, a borrowed jacket she forgot to return. Each time, she felt the nightmares of her empty apartment grow weaker. Each time, she felt more human. One evening, long after Emma had gone to bed, Sophia found Michael at the kitchen table, drowning in job listings and unpaid bills. Any luck? She asked softly, placing a cup of coffee beside him. He shook his head. Interviews, but they're all hours away. It'd mean relocating. You don't want to? He looked toward the hallway, where photographs of Anna still hung. Emma visits her mom's grave every week, talks to her about her week. Moving would mean, his voice cracked. He didn't finish. Sophia nodded, the silence heavy between them. And then she said what had been clawing at her chest. They'll review me next month, to decide if I'm fit for duty again. Michael looked at her, his eyes steady, knowing. And are you? Her breath hitched. I don't sleep. When I do, I'm back there. The ambush. The explosion. The people I couldn't save. Survivor's guilt, he murmured. Her defenses flared. Is that your diagnosis, doctor? He shook his head. No. That's my confession. Sophia blinked, caught off guard. When Anna was sick, Michael continued, his voice raw, I kept thinking, If I'd pushed harder, spotted it sooner, tried a different treatment. I knew up here, he tapped his temple, that I'd done everything possible. But here, he pressed a hand to his chest, I blamed myself. Every day. It was the first time he had spoken Anna's name aloud to Sophia. And in that fragile moment, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. Does it get better? She whispered. He held her hand, almost without realizing. Not better. Different. You build a life around the empty space. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of grief, of hope, of something new neither dared name. The kitchen clock chimed 11. They both pulled away, as if waking from a dream. But something had shifted. Something irreversible. 2 weeks later, Michael would learn the truth. His firing hadn't been about protocol. It had been about profit. And the hospital's greed was about to ignite a war. The pharmacy smelled of dust and antiseptic. Rows of pill bottles gleamed under fluorescent light as Dr. William Green, one of Michael's former colleagues, spotted him by the counter. Michael, Green greeted warmly, his voice carrying genuine affection. Haven't seen you in weeks. Michael forced a polite smile, trying to keep busy. Green glanced around, then lowered his voice. You should know what really happened. Michael frowned. What do you mean? Dawson, Green said, leaning closer. Your department was too costly. Too many emergency procedures. Too much uncompensated care. He needed to cut, and you were the easiest target. The Marine? That was just his excuse. Michael felt his jaw tighten, anger flashing across his face. He had suspected, of course. But hearing it spoken aloud hit harder than any dismissal letter. Doesn't matter now, he muttered, shoving his hands into his pockets. I've got interviews. Burlington. 4 hours away. Green's brow furrowed. 4 hours? What about Emma? What about her? Michael snapped, then softened instantly. She needs stability, security, and I can't give her that here. The words tasted like defeat. That night, the Hayes house was half dismantled. Boxes stacked against the walls. Books, dishes, photographs, memories folded away like they were disposable. When Sophia arrived, grocery bag in hand, she froze at the sight. You got a job, she said quietly. Michael didn't look up from the box of medical journals he was packing. Ellington Medical Center. They need a trauma surgeon. Ellington. Her voice cracked. That's out of town. He nodded, his movements rigid. We move next week. Sophia stood in the doorway, the bag slipping slightly from her grasp. That's good news, then. It's necessary, Michael corrected. Were you even going to tell me? The edge in her voice sliced through the silence. Or were you just going to disappear? Michael paused, his shoulders heavy. Sophia, I'm doing what I have to. For Emma. Sophia stepped closer, her face uncharacteristically uncertain. You and Emma, you've helped me more than you know. The nightmares, they're less when I'm here. I feel human again. Michael finally looked at her. Conflict stormed in his eyes. I haven't felt alive since Anna died. But I can't think about myself right now. Emma comes first. Sophia swallowed hard. Then, with a burst of determination, she said, the base hospital is looking for civilian trauma surgeons. Good pay. You wouldn't have to leave. Suspicion flickered in his gaze. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. Maybe I'm being selfish, she admitted. Maybe I need you both in my life. The moment lingered, electric. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Until Sophia's phone rang. Her commander's name flashed across the screen. She answered, her tone clipped, professional. When she hung up, her face had gone pale. What is it? Michael asked. They've moved up my fitness review. Someone reported concerns about my mental state after the accident. Her voice was sharp now, military walls slamming back into place. My career's in jeopardy. She turned to leave, shoulders stiff, pride shielding fear. Michael stood among the half-packed boxes, watching her retreat. The sound of the door closing felt like a chapter ending. That night, Emma sat cross-legged on her bed, looking up at her father. Dad. Yes, Bug. Do you like Sophia? Like you liked Mom? Michael blinked, caught off guard. He sat on the edge of the bed, considering his words. It's complicated, Em. Why? She asked simply. She makes you smile. You hardly ever smiled after Mom died. Michael's chest tightened. Emma reached for his hand, her little fingers curling around his. Mom told me, before she got sick, that your heart was big enough to love again. I think she'd like Sophia. The innocence in her words struck like lightning. Permission. From the two people who mattered most. The military review boardroom was stark, sterile, intimidating. Sophia sat ramrod straight in her dress uniform, though every muscle screamed with pain. 3 senior officers sat behind the table. The base psychologist read from her file. Lieutenant Carter exhibits symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress, flashbacks, insomnia, hypervigilance. The vehicle accident appears to have been triggered by a panic episode. My recommendation is medical leave with mandatory therapy. Sophia's pulse thundered in her ears. She felt her career slipping away. With respect, sir, I'm fit for duty. The accident was isolated. The chairman shook his head. Your service record is exemplary, Lieutenant. But we cannot take risks. The door opened. All heads turned. Michael stepped in, wearing a suit, expression controlled, but eyes blazing. He carried a folder in his hands. Excuse me, he said firmly. I'm Dr. Michael Hayes, Lieutenant Carter's treating physician. The chairman frowned. This is a closed proceeding, doctor. I understand. But complete medical information is crucial to your decision. These are my observations from her recovery. He set the folder on the table. Sophia stared at him, betrayal flashing in her eyes. She hadn't told him the date. She hadn't asked him to come. The chairman skimmed the papers, his brows rising. You've been providing ongoing care? Yes, Michael said. His voice was calm, clinical. But when his eyes flickered to Sophia's, they carried a message meant only for her. You don't have to fight alone. Lieutenant Carter doesn't need discharge, he continued. She needs support. With therapy and transitional duty, she can return to full strength. PTSD isn't weakness. It's treatable. The board conferred quietly. When the verdict came, it was merciful. Limited duty, mandatory therapy, re-evaluation in 6 months. Sophia held her composure until dismissed. Then she turned on Michael in the hallway, fury barely contained. How dare you, she hissed. You had no right to speak for me. You're right, he said evenly. I crossed a line. But I wasn't going to let them end your career when I knew you could recover. By telling them I'm broken? By telling them you're human, he countered softly. That needing help doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. Her anger faltered. Just a flicker. Enough for the truth of his words to sink in. How did you even know? She whispered. He hesitated. Emma overheard your call. She was worried. She told me. The mention of Emma softened something in Sophia's gaze. I need to fight my own battles, she said quietly. You've been fighting alone long enough, Michael replied. Sometimes the bravest thing is letting someone stand beside you. Before she could answer, shouts echoed down the hallway. News was spreading fast. Cedar Grove Hospital had announced a public forum. The community was demanding answers for staff cuts, longer wait times, declining care. Sophia looked at Michael. You should be there. He shook his head. Why? My job's gone. This isn't about your job, she said firmly. It's about making sure no other doctor ever has to choose between saving a life and keeping it. The town was rising. The hospital was on trial. And Michael was about to discover that the fight for one life could ignite a war for them all. The county hospital's conference room was overflowing. Chairs scraped, voices buzzed, the air thick with frustration. Families stood shoulder to shoulder, spilling into the hallway. Some held handwritten signs. Others clutched photographs of loved ones treated or lost within these walls. At the front sat Robert Dawson and the board, stiff in their suits, trying to look in control. But sweat glistened at Dawson's temple. For the first time, the power felt fragile. One by one, citizens spoke. A mother grieving her child who'd been discharged too early. An elderly man describing endless waits for care. A nurse confessing the unbearable pressure to cut corners. And then, Michael Hayes rose. The room stilled. Recognition rippled through the crowd. The doctor who had delivered their babies stitched their wounds, saved their families in the dead of night. He walked to the microphone, papers in hand, though his voice needed none. "I didn't come here to beg for my job back," he began, steady and low. "I came because this community deserves the truth." His words cut through the room. He spoke of manipulated protocols, of lives measured in profit margins, of administrators who valued balance sheets more than human breath. His voice shook not with fear, but with the weight of carrying too many unspoken truths. And then the doors opened. Gasps swept the crowd. Sophia Carter entered, her uniform pressed, medals gleaming, Marines at her side. Her presence filled the room like thunder. She stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "My name is Lieutenant Sophia Carter. 6 weeks ago, I should have died. But I'm alive because Dr. Hayes chose humanity over protocol. In combat, we live by one rule: no one gets left behind. Is this hospital prepared to say otherwise?" Her words struck like a match. The room erupted, applause, shouts, voices demanding change. Board members shifted uneasily. Dawson's composure cracked, his gaze darting nervously. In the chaos, one thing became clear: the people were no longer with him. The board chairman leaned into his mic. "In light of these concerns, we will conduct a full review. Effective immediately, Dr. Hayes is offered reinstatement." The crowd roared approval. But Michael shook his head. "I didn't come for my title," he said. "I came so no doctor has to choose between saving a life and keeping their job. We need transparency, oversight, patient care over profit." The demand was echoed, shouted, carried like a chant through the chamber until the board had no choice but to agree. Dawson was placed on leave, pending investigation. For the first time in years, the people had taken their hospital back. Outside, the night air was cool. Sophia found Michael amid the crowd, their eyes meeting with something unspoken. "You could have taken it," she said. "Your job. Your old life." He shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Some things matter more than a nameplate on a door." His gaze softened. "Like you." The kiss was gentle, hesitant, but it carried the weight of two broken souls daring to begin again. "Dad." Emma's voice rang out as she ran up, her small arms wrapping around them both. "Does this mean we're not moving away?" Michael knelt, pulling her close. "How would you feel if I worked at the base hospital instead? That way, we'd stay right here, close to Mom." Emma's eyes lit with hope. "And Sophia could visit even more." Sophia crouched, smiling. "If that's okay with you." Emma threw her arms around both of them. And just like that, a new family began to take shape. 6 months later, morning sunlight streamed through the Hayes kitchen. Military boots sat by the door alongside sneakers and dress shoes. On the fridge, 3 calendars overlapped. 3 lives now woven into one rhythm. Michael flipped pancakes. Sophia braided Emma's hair. The radio played quietly, announcing improvements at the hospital under new leadership. "They're calling it the Hayes Protocol," Sophia teased, passing him a mug of coffee. Michael chuckled, embarrassed. "I just did what was right." Emma grinned. "That's why they named it after you." Later that day, they visited Anna's grave. Emma chattered about school and projects while arranging flowers. Then she took Sophia's hand and pulled her closer. "Mom," Emma said softly, "this is Sophia." "She makes us smile again." Sophia knelt, heart pounding. Slowly, she removed one of her medals and laid it among the flowers. "I promise to take care of them both," she whispered, words meant only for the woman she would never meet, but who was part of the family she now belonged to. That evening, their backyard was filled with laughter. Neighbors, colleagues, Marines, friends, all gathered under the glow of string lights. Sophia leaned against the old oak tree, watching Michael laugh with Emma. When he joined her, she spoke quietly. "I got my new assignment," she said. He braced himself, fear flickering. "Where?" "Training medics," she smiled. "Right here at the base. Permanent posting." Relief washed over him, so strong he nearly staggered. Their embrace was quiet, fierce, inevitable. Later, with Emma asleep upstairs, they sat together on the couch, sifting through photographs, the past with Anna, the present with Sophia, the future still unwritten. Sophia pulled a small wrapped box from her pocket. Inside was a wooden puzzle piece, rough on one side, smooth on the other. "It's us," she said. "Not replacing what was lost. Just making something new." Michael held it to the light. Imperfect. Scarred. Beautiful. Like them. On the mantel sat a new family photo, Michael, Sophia, and Emma at the lake. And beside it, Anna's photos remained, not hidden or replaced, but woven into the story that had grown around her memory. Because healing hadn't meant forgetting. It had meant learning to build again. And sometimes, the strongest families are the ones built from broken pieces. What do you think? Is it braver to follow the rules, or to break them when a life is on the line? And if you were in Michael's place, what choice would you have made?